Thank you for taking the time to be here. This conversation's about understanding what is shifting in the current funding landscape and how organizations can respond. Giving is concentrating, and when capital concentrates, confidence becomes a big factor in our approach. So together we'll explore how to build that confidence. Major donor growth today is less about activity and more about structure. Before we move into the frameworks and data presented here, I want to share a bit about myself for those that don't yet know me. I have the privilege of being a professional fundraiser, and that wasn't necessarily on accident. I started as a volunteer fundraiser because I cared deeply about causes and was genuinely excited to be a part of something bigger than myself. I love fundraising for my school. As a teenager, I connected with the general public to raise funds and awareness for organizations like Oxfam. And as an adult, I signed up for endurance events like half marathons, Tough Mudders, and century bike rides to raise funds for organizations I believed in. Those experiences taught me that passion alone was not enough. What made the difference was clearly conveying the need to help others understand why it mattered and remind them of their desire to feel good supporting great causes that are also close to their heart. When I could clearly communicate the urgency and impact and my understanding of the issue with clarity, support naturally followed. Those lessons have helped shape my professional life. And today, as a certified fundraising executive with more than 20 years experience in the nonprofit sector, I've worked across environmental conservation, wildlife protection, community health, substance use recovery. I've supported veteran causes as well as the arts. I've worked with organizations locally, nationally, and internationally, supporting with multiple revenue streams across foundations, high net worth donors, and corporate partnerships. Reviewing these sectors, one pattern holds true. Major donor outcomes come down to transparency. When leadership can articulate direction with steadiness and confidence, support will follow. The 2025 Bank of America study of philanthropy confirms something important. Affluent giving is up more than 30% over the past decade, and 81% of affluent households gave in 2024. However, participation, i.e., giving donations, is narrowing. Fewer donors are driving a larger share of capital, and donors that consider themselves expert donors give 6 times more. Therefore, in this environment where giving is concentrated, major donor strategy becomes central to revenue stability. This increased concentration highlights the importance of high capacity relationships. When capital is concentrated, the relationship between organizations and donors change, but in subtle ways. A smaller group of individuals are driving a larger share of philanthropic capital, and that naturally increases influence, but it also increases scrutiny. A lot of high capacity donors are thoughtful about their giving. Some may have formal strategies. Many are discussing their philanthropy with advisors, partners, or even family members. They're comparing organizations not just by their mission alignment, but by internal leadership, clarity around goals, and organizational maturity. In this environment, donors aren't just supporting causes they care about, they're evaluating whether an organization has defined priorities, internal alignment, and the discipline to be able to steward larger investments responsibly over time. I.e., are you capable of handling a large investment? Do you know what you'll do with it? And what is the impact you can create with this meaningful gift? This doesn't mean donors are becoming transactional. It means they're becoming intentional. And this requires confidence. in our leadership, our structure, and that momentum will be sustained beyond a single gift. In this concentrated funding landscape, capital follows clarity and steadiness, and donor confidence is a strategic asset. Donor-centric fundraising is often misunderstood. It doesn't mean allowing donors to dictate your mission or reshape your work to fit individual preferences. It's about getting to the heart of the donor's experience of your organization, where there may be friction. Let's think about where priorities might be unclear or where impact is implied but not fully visible. At its core, donor-centric fundraising is an integrated and collaborative approach to raising money that strengthens loyalty over time. It inspires donors to remain engaged longer and to make more generous gifts, and often to shift from modest giving to deeper investment sooner. The concept itself is simple. It focuses on the factors that make fundraising sustainable and profitable, and those insights come directly from donors. The essence of being donor-centric is to view decisions through the eyes of your donors. Think about, are you making it easy to give? Is it easy to understand the impact? Is it easy to stay connected? Donor-centric fundraising requires clarity about your own direction first, and then you can align an invitation with a donor's interest in a way that feels thoughtful rather than opportunistic. In concentrated giving cycles, donors are being more deliberate. They want to understand not only what you do, but what changes because of their involvement. They want to see how their investment advances defined priorities within your stable organization. And what that means for us is that clarity isn't an option or optional, sorry. It means leadership alignment cannot be assumed, and that engagement must be intentional rather than reactive. When donors are more deliberate, organizations must be more disciplined. In a concentrated environment, generosity follows structure. To respond to this environment, we can use a simple but disciplined framework. We call it the 4 C's of major donor confidence: clarity, concentration, cultivation, continuity. These aren't tactics, they're leadership disciplines. Clarity ensures your organization knows exactly what it's asking for and why. Concentration ensures your attention is focused on the right relationships rather than dispersed across too many possibilities. Cultivation ensures those relationships are prepared, sequenced, and stewarded intentionally. And continuity ensures that engagement is sustained beyond a single conversation or gift. When these 4 are aligned, donor confidence strengthens because the organization feels stable, prepared, and intentional. When one's weak, momentum can slow. You might see activity, but not real progress. This framework is designed to reduce friction, increase visibility, and build confidence over time. Major donor confidence is built through disciplined leadership, not isolated activity. Clarity begins internally. It shows up in defined priorities, clear funding needs, aligned messaging, and leadership alignment around what matters most right now. It sounds simple, but in practice, it's where a lot of organizations are struggling. Different leaders may describe the organization's priorities in slightly different ways. Their programs may be compelling individually, but the overall funding picture may not be clear, and high capacity donors are going to notice this quickly. If a board member, executive director, and development lead all describe the organization's priorities a bit differently, it creates uncertainty, and donors might care deeply about the mission, but that uncertainty increases risk. It's vital that our teams can clearly articulate what the organization is focused on, what an investment makes possible, and how that investment advances priorities. When that clarity is present, donors feel much more confident stepping forward with support. Clarity does not simplify the work. It makes the direction visible and builds trust before a gift is made. A lot of organizations can confuse activity with strategy. When teams feel pressure to grow major donor revenue, the instinct can be to expand the list, more prospects, more outreach, more conversations. But spreading attention too widely can slow progress rather than accelerate it. Concentration means identifying the individuals who are most aligned with your mission and most capable of making meaningful investments. Then focus your attention there. Let's start with a top 10 based on their potential level of engagement and investment. Some may be long-term prospects, others might be emerging major donors, and others may be earlier in the relationship. Tiering these contacts will help your team prioritize attention so the right amount of time and preparation is given to the relationships with the greatest potential. From there, ownership should be clear. Someone within leadership or development should be responsible for the relationship and for defining the next step forward. With this type of focus, conversations can deepen, building momentum. If we stay scattered, relationships are likely going to stay surface level. In major donor work, precision consistently outperforms volume. Cultivation is often thought of simply as relationship building. And of course, relationships matter. But in successful major donor programs, cultivation is rarely accidental. It is engineered. That means leadership is prepared for conversations. Meetings aren't happening without context. There are briefings in advance so everyone understands the donor's interests, past engagement, and where the relationship currently stands. It also means there is intentional sequencing. One conversation leads naturally to the next. The organization is thinking about how a donor moves from initial interest to deeper understanding to meaningful investment. Organizations can support this through what's called moves management, which simply means having visibility into where each relationship stands and what the next step should be. A move could be a thoughtful update, an invitation to an event, a leadership meeting, or a proposal conversation. The important thing is that the relationship is not left to chance. Consider how you will track and remind yourself to keep that momentum going. This can be through your CRM, a simple spreadsheet, or even a calendar reminder that prompts you to follow up and stay engaged. The system itself doesn't need to be complicated. What matters is that it exists and that it is used consistently. When this structure is present, cultivation feels thoughtful and coordinated rather than reactive. Major gifts are not personality outcomes, they are system outcomes. Structure creates that momentum that allows relationships to deepen over time. Continuity is what turns engagement into partnership. A donor relationship should not begin and end around an ask. It should feel like an ongoing conversation where the donor continues to see how their support is making a difference and where the organization remains present between giving moments. This means staying in touch in thoughtful ways throughout the year. You can share progress to let the donor know what is unfolding within the work that they're supporting, perhaps occasionally inviting them closer to the mission. A short update, a note when something meaningful happens, or an opportunity to see the work in action can go a long way in helping donors feel connected to the impact they're supporting. It's also helpful to ask donors directly how they prefer to stay connected. Some people want a brief update a few times a year, while others will enjoy deeper involvement or the occasional invitation to events or conversations with leadership. Simply asking about their communication preference and timing shows respect for their time and helps the relationship develop in a way that feels natural rather than forced. Internally, continuity also requires a simple way to keep track of relationships. Your team should be able to see when was the last conversation and what's the next step. Again, a CRM can help with this, but you can keep things moving with a shared spreadsheet or even um, invitations for calendar reminders. The goal is simply to make sure relationships stay active and that communication does not stop once the gift has been made. Over time, consistency builds trust. Donors notice when organizations stay present and engaged, and they also notice when communication fades after the initial gift. When continuity is present, donors experience the organization as steady, thoughtful, and capable of managing larger investments over time. I want to ground all of this in a real life example. We worked with a global organization that wanted to deepen engagement with major donors. Their mission was strong, the programs were meaningful, and there were individuals in their network capable of making significant investments. The challenge was that very little intentional effort had ever been made to engage major donors in a structured way. We began by bringing clarity to how major donors connected to the organization's priorities. Leadership aligned around the organization's top funding needs and how those opportunities could be communicated with confidence. From there, we introduced concentration. Rather than approaching fundraising broadly, we identified a small group of high capacity individuals who were most aligned with the mission and most capable of meaningful investment. Cultivation then became more intentional. Leadership was prepared for meetings with short briefings and profiles so that conversations were informed, thoughtful, and focused on the donor's interests and motivations. Finally, we introduced continuity through a simple dashboard that allowed the team to track conversations, next steps, and relationship movement over time. The shift wasn't simply more outreach, it was the introduction of structure that allowed leadership to engage donors with clarity and confidence. As the structure came into place, we focused on making the work visible. We began tracking a small set of practical indicators that helped the team see how major donor relationships were developing over time. This included prospect tiering, meeting activity, and stage progression. So it was clear where each relationship stood at any given time. We also identified a clear relationship owner for each donor, so responsibility for the relationship was defined. Beyond that, we looked at engagement frequency and overall value of the major donor pipeline. This helped leadership see who had been contacted, as well as how relationships were progressing and where the strongest opportunities were emerging. One simple but powerful practice was documenting the next strategic move after each conversation. Rather than leaving meetings with a general sense that things went well, the team identified the next step that would continue the relationship forward. Tracking these indicators isn't just about measurement, it's about bringing visibility to major donor engagement across the organization. Instead of this work sitting with one individual, leadership and the board could see how relationships were developing and where momentum was building and how they can contribute. That visibility creates shared accountability. When the wider team can see the progress being made, major donor strategy becomes something the organization actively supports rather than something that happens quietly behind the scenes, relying on one person. When leadership can see movement, strategy becomes tangible. The encouraging thing about this work is that it doesn't require a large system or months of preparation to begin, the organizations can start bringing structure to major donor engagement in a few simple steps. The first step is to define your top three funding priorities. These should reflect the areas where additional investment would meaningfully advance your organization's work. When priorities are clear, conversations with donors become much easier because leadership can speak directly about what support will make happen. Next, identify a small group of individuals who are most aligned with the mission and capable of making meaningful investments. Starting with a top 10 is enough. These might be existing donors, longtime supporters, board connections, or individuals already close to the organization. Look at your volunteers. Once those individuals are identified, assign relationship ownership based on who is personally closest to the prospect. This might be a board member, an executive leader, or a volunteer who already has a trusted relationship with the donor. Development teams can support this strategy, but the relationship itself should sit with the person who has the most natural connection. From there, define one thoughtful next move for each relationship. That can be a conversation, an introduction, sharing a meaningful update, or inviting the prospect to see the work more closely. The goal here is simply to move the relationship forward in a deliberate way. Momentum in major donor fundraising rarely begins with large campaigns or complex strategies. It begins with intention and a few focused steps that help relationships deepen over time. As we step back and look at the broader picture, the framework really comes down to four leadership disciplines that reinforce one another. Clarity builds confidence. When leadership can clearly articulate priorities, funding needs, and direction, donors understand where their investment fits and why it matters. Concentration builds momentum. When organizations focus their attention on individuals who are most aligned with the mission and most capable of meaningful investment, relationships have space to deepen and conversations move forward more naturally. Cultivation builds trust. Thoughtful preparation, intentional conversations, and steady relationship development allows donors to experience the organization's leadership and vision over time. And continuity builds stability. When communication continues beyond the moment of gift and donors remain connected to the work they support, trust compounds and relationships begin to mature into long-term partnerships. Taken together, these disciplines strengthen donor confidence. In this narrowing funding landscape, where smaller numbers of individuals are driving a larger share of philanthropic capital, confidence becomes a meaningful competitive advantage. To support this work beyond today's conversation, we have some resources for you. You'll receive access to today's webinar recording along with the presentation slides so you can revisit the framework and share it with colleagues or board members who might benefit from the discussion. We'll also include the donor relationship roadmap, which is a simple framework designed to help leadership teams think through how major donor relationships move from early engagement toward deeper partnership. Hopefully, you'll find it helpful to step back and look at where relationships currently stand and where more attention might be needed. These materials aren't intended to be a checklist to rush through. They're meant to support thoughtful reflection within leadership teams. Often the most valuable conversations happen when boards, executive leadership, and development teams sit together and discuss where clarity, focus, and structure can be strengthened. Major donor strategy becomes much easier when the organization is aligned around how relationships are developed and stewarded over time. For some attending today, this conversation is enough to get started. However, others might want support moving from these insights into implementation. And we offer a few ways to collaborate to support your major donor work. One area of support is the Major Donor Prospect Intelligence Package. This involves strategically identifying and researching high capacity individuals who are genuinely aligned with your mission. The goal isn't to produce a long list of prospects, but to develop in-depth targeted profiles that help leadership understand who top prospects are, what motivates their philanthropy, and where meaningful alignment may exist. We also partner with organizations through providing major donor strategy support on an ongoing basis, where we help leadership teams build the internal structure needed for sustained major donor engagement. This can include developing a clear moves management approach, aligning leadership and board participation in donor relationships, and creating systems that help track progress and maintain continuity. In either case, the goal is not more activity or additional pressure on already busy teams. The goal is to create durable structure so that major donor relationships can develop strong supporters over time. Thank you for being a part of this conversation and for the work you are doing in our communities. Major donor confidence is not built through urgency or pressure, but through clarity, focus, structure, and continuity. When leadership teams are aligned around those disciplines, donors feel it. Confidence grows, relationships deepen, and support follows. If today's discussion was helpful, please stay connected. You can access the webinar recording, the slides, and the donor relationship roadmap at kindredspiritscollaborative.com/major donor. And if you'd like to discuss your own major donor strategy, we offer a complimentary consultation for organizations that want to explore how these ideas might apply to their current funding environment. I appreciate the opportunity to share this time with you and look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you.